Mr. Tom Deitrich, the Senior Vice President and General Manager, Digital Networking, Freescale Semiconductor. So I would request Mr. Tom to kindly come over. So put your hands together to Mr. Tom. He's worked in various capacities, extensive experience in product management, R&D, supply chain management, and business development for wireless products. It's straight away over to you, Mr. Tom, to take us through this session.
Very much. I am delighted to be here. I follow on the heels of two great speakers with Lip-Bu and Graham, and I'm between you and lunch. So this is a very awkward position for me to be in, so maybe I need to speak fast, but I really want to spend a bit of time and talk about what happens when the billion devices that Graham mentioned get connected to the internet, and what happens with all of that traffic. So the topic of my presentation today is really all about the heterogeneous networks that are really being built. And hopefully the slides will come. So that probably doesn't work. No, a different presentation. I think you have a different one up. Maybe that IESA doesn't want me to speak about their activities. Maybe we need a faster network, but jokes aside, I guess really the topics that I wanted to cover is about how all of the traffic that is created by the next billion devices to be connected to the network find their way through the network, and what are some of the challenges that are associated with the semiconductor solutions that are behind the network itself. I'll focus the comments primarily on the wireless side of the network in the interest of time. So let's set the stage. Lip-Bu talked about the amount of traffic that is increasing in the network by an exponential rate. Think about a simple statistic. 90% of all of the photographs that humans have ever taken happened within the last 1 year. And if you take that statistic and really fast forward and think about what happens inside of our networks, what happens inside of our data centers as a result of that kind of traffic increase, you can see that the problem that everyone faces is enormous. And we need to come up with very innovative solutions to be able to deal with it. 67% of the internet traffic today is video. And that in itself is an alarming thought when you think about the amount of bandwidth that it consumes. Now let's look at it from a different perspective. Let's talk about it from the view of an operator and what are the challenges that they face. The rate of traffic is increasing. The diversity of the traffic is increasing as operators are challenged to find ways to connect. The last few hundred thousands of villages with coverage with wireless networks across a country like India, as well as providing greater and greater network density, greater and greater traffic control, greater and greater ability for consumers to increase the amount of bandwidth that they can access. They have to do all of that in an environment which is cost constrained. All of the telcos, by and large, are facing operational cost challenges as well as CapEx challenges. And that environment, coupled with the regulatory environment, is another challenge that operators face. If you take that and you turn it around, what can wireless infrastructure do to be able to deal with those challenges from the demand of the consumers from a traffic standpoint and the demand of the operators for cost and diversity? These are the types of things that a semiconductor vendor really needs to address. What do we do from the semiconductor solution point of view and the needs of our customers? Multiple approaches are required. There is no one-size-fits-all here. We need to address the problem at all locations within the network, whether we're talking about how backhaul is handled, how traffic can be offloaded from the network itself, how we deal with the various geographies and the regulatory environment, how we use spectrum much more efficiently, and how the network topology is really built. Probably the most innovation in the wireless space occurs in all of these areas, but in specifically with a heterogeneous network. What do I mean by a heterogeneous network? It really is many solutions and a lot of diversity in those solutions depending on the assets that are available and the challenges that are in front of the person deploying the network. You'll have different sized cells from picocells all the way, or femtocells all the way up to macro base stations. You will have Wi-Fi offload. You'll have solutions like Cloud RAN where you can utilize different parts of the network depending on how your traffic and how the people using your network are moving around. We need to think about how we can use the diversity of technical solutions to create better economics, better operating expenses, lower power consumption, and really improving the footprint and the CapEx spend of all of the points within the network itself. Really taking it from that level down inside to the semiconductor solution itself. What are the challenges that the semi provider who sells into that network really faces? In order to develop these solutions, it is a very complex set of IP to be able to produce it. There are various aspects of the solution that need to be handled in hardware acceleration. Some is done in a microprocessor, some is done in a DSP. Higher and higher levels of integration to save on the footprint and the size of the base station itself. If we're going to put base stations inside of this room as point solutions, they can't be very large. They can't consume a lot of power. They can't require a lot of temperature control. They have to be able to be connected very easily. And all of that means a lot of integration in the semiconductor solution itself. It's more than just the semi, it's more than just the chips. It is the complete solution. In order to win in this space, you really have to have hardware as well as software that's tightly coupled and completely optimized so that you can achieve the processing speeds and the bandwidth requirements for the networks of tomorrow. Multiple price points and multiple performance points. Just think about a wireless chipset that has to go from a residential femtocell, which costs well under $100, all the way up to a macro cell that has to be able to handle 320 megahertz sectors of an LTE solution. Wildly different product requirements and different performance, as well as different cost. How can you do that in a cost-efficient manner for the semiconductor provider, but also for the guy who has to build all of those base stations? If it's an entirely different architecture, an entirely different solution, you really don't gain a lot by having that diversity of products. And it really is about cost at the end of the day. Relentless focus on reducing the cost of the solution. As the cost of every connection in the network has gone down, the number of connections has gone up. It is that inverse relationship that will continue to drive the focus on cost for everyone involved in the value chain.